holds BA degree from University of Nigeria, MA from MA and MFA from University of Iowa, and PhD from Monash University. She is a recipient of the Fulbright Scholar Award and the Creative Victoria Award. Her work has been exhibited internationally in museums, galleries, and public spaces. And apart from this, all of it, I myself am a huge fan of your work. Being a Jackson Pollock fan myself and seeing you trying to recreate that in the postmodern era, when I first got to know about this your work, I thought, oh my God, this woman is actually keeping the legacy alive. And you will not believe me. You will think that I'm blabbering about it. This is such a fangirl moment for me. I watched your 1 hour this University of UIA walkthrough of your exhibition live, and I was waiting and I listened to all the inputs that you were putting. So thank you, and it gives us such an honor and such a blessing to start our this season with you. So yeah, thank you so much for honoring us with your presence.
And thank you so much for joining us. I first met Professor Nnenna at Rachel Carson Center in Germany, and I was moved by the lecture she gave. I think she talked about bioplastic, and that's how this entire idea of environmental humanities and praxis came into existence. And we talked about this with our team, and that's how we started this. So we are extremely honored to have uh, with us. So yeah, I mean, over to you.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored as well to be here. Can you all hear me well?
Yeah, we can hear you. Let me just see.
Thank you, Shawnee, right?
Yeah, Shaoli.
Shawnee and Ritam. I'm so honored by your invitation, and I'm happy that you were enthralled by my work, Shawnee, and so you decided to invite me again to come and talk about my bioplastic practice.
Yeah, please. That would be an honor. It's such a fangirl thing for me.
Thank you. So I'm gonna, go ahead and share some thoughts about it. I have a slide that I'd like to share. Let me put it up. If you don't mind. Do I have permission to share?
Yeah, sure. I think Rhythm, can you just like grant her the permission to share or like help us to share the screen?
Okay.
I don't think there is any permission. I think you can share directly.
Okay, let me just be sure my system is allowing me to share because it's telling me I need to go in and agree. Give me 1 second here. Oh no, it's asking me to quit and reopen so I can enable it. If you guys don't mind, just give me 1 second. I'll join you like in 2 minutes or a minute. Okay. Yep. Just give me a second. I'm gonna quit and then I'll come back. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's.
We can hear you.
Okay. Let me attempt to share again because I have to get out and come back in. Okay, now it's working. Thank you. All right. Is anyone able to see my slide? Did I enable it?
Not yet.
Okay. How about now?
Yeah. We can see it.
So I'm gonna share my slide and as I can go through that about my work and especially what I'm interested in. Okay. So the title of my talk is Rethinking Food Waste: An Eco-Art Approach. And in this presentation, basically what I want to talk about is how bio-waste. And then lastly, by talking about these things, I will demonstrate to you all that eco-pedagogy, which is like learning and teaching about art and social material interactions with bioplastic, can foster eco learning and inspire innovative thinking on waste, material transformation, and ecological stewardship. So these are the three goals I'm hoping to achieve with this conversation. So for the longest time, I've been arguing and making the case that the best way to foster ecological awareness beyond environmental scholarship is to engage the public in a dialogue of climate change and climate issues. As such, I've used my studio at Praxis with bioplastic as a platform to promote ecological awareness and sustainability by inviting people and audiences to explore my materials, not just look at it, but also kind of engage with it. The goal is to encourage conversation about climate change and sustainable action, and to spark eco-learning, creative engagement, and awareness of bioplastics. In this presentation, I will explain how I adopt social material practice that involves others in my bioplastic discussion through learning and teaching. However, I view bioplastic as a valuable tool for discovering, rethinking, and contextualizing sustainable solutions in an era of climate decline. So, underpinned by my role as a teacher, as an artist, and a researcher, my creative practice focuses on how my materials explore bioplastics and activate creative experiences, learning, and ecological thinking. I invite people into my studio to engage with my bioplastic artwork as a means of expanding environmental engagements. My main interest in using bioplastic as a material is not only to spotlight the problem of petrochemical waste in the art industry, but also to contribute to solving the problem of significant carbon footprint art making leaves in its wake. So here are some materials and processes that I apply to my bioplastic work. So I create home made bioplastics from my kitchen waste. You can see here orange peels, banana peels, potato and pop-up peels, and using mostly of these expired, sometimes I also use like expired fruits like berries and things like that to create small and large artworks. And it provokes people to rethink how they engage with upcycling and using biosustainable methods. This is like the three objects in here are all like made from samples of the food waste, so plantain peels, cornstarch, and banana peels. To contextualize bioplastic within my discussion, I define bioplastic as an organic, handmade, moldable, and compostable material typically created from expired fruits, vegetables, and peels. National Geographic offers a simpler definition of bioplastic. It says that bioplastic is a simple plastic made from plants or other biodegradable materials instead of petroleum. The European Bioplastic website describes it as a material that is bio-based, biodegradable, or both. What all these definitions have in common is that they are all derived from biomaterials and therefore have the potential to biodegrade. To distinguish my practice from all the other ones that have been, promoted by many of the bioplastic industries is that they extract theirs from, synthetic, plant-based materials, and they extract the polyiatric and the polyhydroxy alkanodes from plants and microorganisms, whereas my process utilizes all aspects of the products, include the skin, the wrapping, the fiber. I'm not specifically looking for the specific biopolymers or chemicals that come from the plants, but using everything in general. So nothing is left unused. My process involves blending, cooking, spreading the paste out, drying the materials, and then once they're dried, the membranes are peeled from non-stick surfaces for further creative and pedagogical use. My methods utilize bioplastic in a socially engaged context and as a learning tool is underpinned by Tara Page. Tara Page is a scholar who talks about the benefits of engaging socially by teaching. And she points out that by engaging materials and human participants in and through pedagogic experience, people come to know themselves in relationship to their environment. In this context, I present willing participants with an opportunity to engage with the materials fluidly, viscerally, and without a prescribed format. This ensures that people who engage with my bioplastic materials can feel and express things in ways that animate an embodied perception in the participants. In the early phases of participant engagement, I typically would share photo studies or physical elements of the bioplastic experiments that I've made from peels and bananas, plantains, onions, mushrooms, celery, you name it. And as participants encounter them viscerally, it calls to mind connections to microorganisms. They think about seaweeds. Sometimes they think it looks like leather, ice, patched earth, water, mold, all kinds of things, and insects' wings and things like that. And although their responses refer to attributes related to translucency, texture, color, and recognizable organic forms, the participants' biological and geological references do more than describe the surface qualities. They reveal how the materials activate ecological memory and biological awareness. These associations are linked to things like decomposition, regeneration, and multi species interdependency. In this sense, the participants' language shifts from bioplastics and being perceived as bioplastics being perceived as manufactured objects to being understood as part of the living ecological continuum. Their responses echo the material's origins in organic waste and highlight how even discarded biomatter remains embedded within broader cycles of delay, nourishment, and renewal. What emerges through these conversations is an intuitive recognition that waste is not simply a problem to eliminate, but it is a component of the ecological metabolism. As participants handle the bioplastic, their encounter takes an olfactory and gustatory turn. Some participants respond to the delicious looking quality, the pleasing smells of the materials. On one occasion, one person was so tempted to taste it, but I had to stop them because there's really no quality control. I'm not making these to for them to consume. I was just making it for visual and touch experiences. Another person remarked that it made them really inspired to redeem their waste and to take all of their expired kitchen wastes and use it for some kind of art purpose or something that is more useful. For many participants, the resemblance of the bioplastic tackiness to, I don't know if you guys know what is fruit leather, but in America here, there's something called fruit leather, which is like a, they crush the fruit and then they kind of spread it out and dry it, and then they peel it out and people can eat it as if it were a sheet or something like that. So they roll it up a lot of times and people chew on them. So a lot of people felt like my bioplastic reminded them of this strong reference to fruit leather. Interestingly, there was a double major in business and art who had an interesting proposition that maybe we could use and make animal food producers create bioplastic animal feed. This would upcycle food waste while reducing the need to plant or harvest crops for animals. He argued that the environmental benefit could be significant given that waste is turned into food, and the greater effort could be placed on producing food that humans would consume instead of one that animals would consume. During our conversation, we also considered the prospects of making meals for wild animals like feral cats or birds or squirrels, like placing them outdoors and maybe hanging them so that they can have and enjoy the byproducts of waste. Encounters with the smell and edible appearances of the bioplastic also directed participants towards broader ecological questions surrounding food systems. The sensory resemblance of fruit leather or preserved food evokes the latent nutritional value embedded within materials often discarded as waste. This material thinking highlights the paradox of contemporary consumption. That is to say, while enormous quantities of edible resources are discarded globally, food insecurity still persists in many regions of the world. By transforming kitchen scraps into bioplastic artwork, the materials invite participants to reconsider the life cycle of food and cultural habits that govern waste. The momentary temptation to taste the material becomes an ecological provocation. It draws attention to the fragile boundaries between nourishment, discard, and creative reuse. These conversations about smell and edibility reveal how bioplastic encounters can result in learning of smells and tastes through social engagements. Moreover, unguided moments make me acutely aware of the missing piece of knowledge in my research. They reveal that there is something new to learn from bioplastic. I catch myself thinking, what would it be like? Wouldn't it be a welcomed idea to transform and consume bioplastic art after making it? I mean, I'm now thinking of making a big bioplastic piece and have people tear off pieces of it to eat. This would not only support William McDonald's or Michael Granot's invitation to pursue a world in which we create waste to delight in, but also contribute to curbing hunger in countries like Nigeria, Bangladesh, and Indonesia, where food security and food waste per capita is significantly high. Adopting a do it yourself bioplastic approach as a learning tool fosters understanding of materials functionality. And as participants examine aspects of the softness, the translucency, the resilience, and durability, they gain a practical insight into its behavior through qualities like its tautness, the stretchability, or its fragility. Responding to its moldability, one participant also considered potential functions. One design student noted its strength and proposed the possibility of molding or modeling specialized 3D medical tools from this material. Another suggested food safe biodegradable items such as plates, cups, clothing, temporary shelters, tents, and festival installations. These reflect These reflections prompted me to consider the possibility of creating children's crayon out of the art material from bioplastic as a sustainable alternative to synthetic products. As participants reflect on the functionality of the bioplastic material, I am reminded of Amanda Botkez's view that bioplastic helps participants to think about the ambivalent relationship that we have to plastic use, waste, and energy consumption. This this perspective highlights how confronting waste issues and staying with trouble, as Donna Haraway notes, can unlock new emotional connections to climate change. For a few minutes more, participants begin to dwell on the capitalist impulse of manufacturers to sweep the climate change issue they generate under the rug. So we end up talking about, capitalist habits and how they sort of produce all of these problems for the climate, and then they just act as if it's not there. It's heartening to see the participants keeping the waste issues in mind and in sight, truly engaged and inspired by each other while uncovering sources of the problem, articulating personal and collective ways forward through reduction, reuse, and recycling approaches. Eco-learning with bioplastic. Why, without these critical social engagements with bioplastic, my creative, give me a second here. Yeah, my creative practice would at best be strong at articulating ecological crisis about food waste, but it would be weak at promoting ecological awareness, sustainability, and collective action. This is why I root my practice in ecological thinking, which maintains that through active eco-learning, people understand the causes and the negative effects of human practices in social and ecological landscapes. It's important, therefore, to socially engage with bioplastic in a way that engenders dialogue and learning, because it enriches mutual enlightenment and challenges what people do and don't do, tackling food waste and other forms of excesses. The eco-pedagogical approach privileges community engagements as a fundamental part of stimulating eco-thinking. Let us also not forget that activating eco-pedagogical approaches essentially centers the voice of the participants. Through interactions, collaborations, and thinking together, people are empowered to not just talk the talk, but also walk the walk. I like that a lot because I feel like a lot of people service the idea of talking about these problems, but not doing anything about it. And I want my art to do something about it. They are encouraged to come to waste issues in ways that are specific and meaningful to them. Eco learning taps into different people's histories, memories, and experiences with food waste, materiality, and art making. It removes learning from being didactic and it enables learning that is supported through touch of things, going outdoors, being in dirt, and in this case, touching and smelling the bioplastic. And it offers visceral ways of engaging deeply with environmental concerns. The informal learning environment that social engagement produce in this context provides participants with the freedom to explore ideas without the constraints of predetermined outcomes or expectations. I find this particularly valuable as it engages or encourages participants to relax their guards and engage more fully through experience. Social material learning with bioplastic extends and refocuses learning and creates experiences, enabling participants to think and create with food and food waste. Unlike many pedagogies that restrict the depth and range of engagement with social environmental issues, this ecological approach that I use invites unpredictable, creative, and dynamic forms of participation that arise through relationships. So next, just going to share some pictures of the participations of my students who were involved in the bioplastic engagement. What becomes evident through these interactions is that the pedagogical value of do-it-yourself bioplastic lies not only in the material properties, but also in its ability to activate ecological consciousness. Participants begin to see waste not as an inert residue, but as a dynamic resource embedded with planetary cycles. Through touching, smelling, stretching, and observing the material's transformation, they encounter firsthand the processes of decay, regeneration, and environmental interdependencies. These embodied encounters translate abstract ecological concepts such as circular economies, biodegradation, and sustainability into tangible experiences. Bioplastic engagements. So usually I would begin the process by sharing small handheld samples of banana, blueberry, spinach, celery, um, orange peels, mushroom, bioplastics with the participants. Each piece is uniquely created so that no two pieces are the same. Passing the samples around allows the participants to have a tangible connection to the bioplastic properties. On one occasion, a participant immediately picked up on the stickiness, playing with it, attempting to stick it to their skin. Without any verbal communication, I began to think about the bioplastic's wearability. What if the bioplastic could be used to make sticky brows? I thought. I wondered if it would stay on the skin or whether it will melt on the body because it has a very plastic like quality. From this participant's action, I learned a new way to think about and to test my material. The next participant, who was holding a banana peel, commented on the similarities between humans and the banana peel. What if humans could be upcycled after death? She said. Maybe it would help us to be less attached to the material world, knowing our long-term goal is to serve the planet. Without knowing it, the participant touches on an ecological democracy, which underscores how human subjects collectively listen to or tap into non-human worlds. This manner of thinking exemplifies how do-it-yourself bioplastic disrupts and transforms perceptions by making us more aware of our bodies and our kinship with other earthly manners. The connection made by two participants through the association to the body and the inevitable ties to the planet, speaks of how learning can occur over the course of dialogue. As time goes on, the interaction develop into a partnership that is about acting with and folding with different subjectivities involved in one another's conversations. Um, the participants talk about stubbornness of the bioplastic because it's quite, taut and stretchy. For some participants, it is stimulating to consider how the bioplastic resists the tears and shapes they've tried to impose on it. They find it noteworthy that even though the bioplastic is fragile, it is strong as a material and as a form in nature. For me, the choice of words, stubbornness and strength, to describe the bioplastic is paradoxical since it subsumes notions of fragility and longevity. Through these cross pollinations of ideas, participants learn about the nuanced physicality of the bioplastic as a form that assumes multiple states of tautness, rigidity, softness, fragility, and decay all at once. These provocations invite us to pay closer attention, learn new ways, and unlearn old realities. It begs the question, what does bioplastic have the potential to do? With the opportunity to handle the bioplastic materials for an extended time, the participants interrogate its longevity, the conditions for preservation and decomposition timeline. Led by these curiosities, we put the bioplastic outdoors over a mulched garden bed to test its biodegradability. After 2 weeks, the group returns to analyze the result. What they found was that most of the bioplastic samples had disappeared, leaving behind only traces of the bioplastic crumbs. The disappearance of many bioplastic samples during the outdoor experiment prompted the participants to consider the role of non-humans in ecological systems. Speculation that insects, birds, and small animals like squirrels may have consumed the material shifted the conversation towards multi-species engagement. Rather than viewing the decomposition solely as a chemical process, participants began to recognize the way in which organic materials circulate through ecological food webs. These reflections emphasize the relational character of bioplastic materials. Once placed in the environment, they become part of a dynamic exchange between organisms, soil, microbes, and climate conditions. In contrast to petrochemical plastics, which resist ecological participation, bioplastics re-enter these metabolic systems, inviting us to imagine materials that coexist with us rather than obstruct natural cycles. In fact, this result takes me back to two sets of bioplastic experiments I conducted earlier in my research during my PhD. The first experiment aimed to test how quickly the small bioplastic samples placed outside would disintegrate. And the second one similarly examined how fast the bioplastic samples placed in a small water-filled jar would change or disintegrate. The former stayed outside for a month. And it took about a month for it to disintegrate, while the latter barely changed after 3 months. The outcome of these tests strongly suggests or aligns with Michigan University professor Rimani Mayarad, who points out that not even nature can engineer bioplastic to disappear quickly. In short, in a short succession. Some studies have shown that without the right conditions, especially intense heat, bioplastics cannot degrade easily without a meaningful time frame. Such conditions also challenges the benefits of creating bioplastic. It makes me wonder if bioplastics can only disintegrate with certain kinds of heat and weather conditions. Would it likely end up in the landfills or the marine environment where they can behave similar to petrol-based bioplastics and have the potential to persist for decades? So while I do recognize that bioplastics have the potential to decompose in natural environments quickly, there are also situations where they can survive and outlive their longevity, outlive their disintegration due to the right conditions. So it shows a limitation with the bioplastic. Just putting that out. So returning to earlier discussions that I had mentioned, the benefits of this kind of bioplastic learning is that it's varied. It creates a lot of dynamic interconnections between the participants, enabling different kind of participant experiences and narratives. It is a form of learning that is based on emotion, touch, storytelling, and spatial experience. Unlike some of the disembodied mechanical human encounters that were critiqued by John Dewey in his book Art as Experience, these sensations and visceral connections that the participants experience with the bioplastic come together to tell a more complete story. Stacey Holman Jones, a scholar of pedagogy, criticizes these embodiments as embodied, sorry, not criticizes, characterizes the embodiment as an embodiment of bodily knowledges. She equates the knowledge to the way that people generate textual thinking and intellectual engagements to make meaning. As participants navigate bioplastics, we can see how the bioplastic experiences energize people to explore a host of ecological issues while also demonstrating learnings about the environment. Within these eco discussions are powerful morals that are useful for thinking about the sustainability of the planet's future, even when the reflections appear somewhat utopian or lack immediate outcome. The engagements nonetheless enable participants to interact with and connect to the bioplastic in an embodied manner. Moreover, in dialoguing about these ecological issues, we begin to see the humanity in one another, the socially inclusive relationship that are espoused in these engagements unite us to a common cause to create a more embodied world that avoids alienation and fights ecological problems. We must necessarily push for a new world beyond old practices and toward a future that propels us to liberation from capitalist exploration. By inviting participants to encounter the material sensorily and dialogically, the practice bridges the gap between environmental knowledge and lived experiences. Participants do not simply learn about sustainability, they encounter the possibilities through the materials itself. In a way, bioplastic becomes more than a substitute for petroleum based products. It becomes a pedagogical medium that reveals ecological relationship embedded within everyday materials and encourages more responsible forms of material imagination. As I've noted before, it would take more than problematizing and aestheticizing the waste issues to remediate ecological concerns of food waste, but by enabling predictable and transformative experiences through my bioplastic practice, I empower participants to form interrelationships with bioplastic such that they invite learning, contemplation, meditation, discussion, and reflection on sustainable living and related matters. Okay, so I'm going to stop here because I know I've been rambling, but I will open up the conversation to questions and comments and other thoughts. Thank you.
It was such a brilliant session by Professor Nina, and your reflections on how waste-based art can reshape ecological consciousness is fascinating. I specifically liked your emphasis on the material experimentation and the human non-human collaboration. It kind of reminds us how sustainability is not only a policy question, but also one of perception and imagination. And it's while we are talking about literature, because Victorian Vanguard is a literature platform and literature is intertwined with art, it also it's compelling reminder that art has the power to transform not just waste, but the way we perceive a relationship with more than the human world. That is also the center question of post-humanism right now. So thank you so much for joining us today. It was such an great honor to have you with us. I think now we will open the floor for the audience if they're willing to ask any questions or they have any insights or anything. You can simply raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask the question.
Out of curiosity, um, what your audience is, are they mostly students or are they the general young people?
So, earlier, Victorian Vanguard, when we were running the first season, it was each and everyone, like artists were joining us, students, people working who have a passionate corner for art and literature. Those people were also joining us. Then we took a break for almost like 6, 7 months to focus more on our personal work engagements. And now I think this time when we started, and we thought that might not a lot of people will be joining, but we saw that our like the loyal audience group is there, but still there are a lot of people who are interested in art, who are students, who are artists. They have joined, so it's such a beautiful thing to say. So Rashi has raised her hand. I think she wants to ask a question. Rashi, you can like unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, I am Anushka. I don't know. I think I logged in with my wrong email ID.
Okay, that's fine.
It was an amazing presentation. Very glad to be here. Um, as I was looking towards your presentation, I was reminded. I recently went on an academic trip to Japan, and where we went to the team labs. And it was a really nice experience in the sense that they tried to create this almost another stimulation where instead of creating like a traditional art and artist boundary, sorry, the art and the audience boundary, they wanted to create an exhibition where people could interact with the art. And I went with like a group of people and we came back. It was a really nice experience. And the artists have definitely tried their best to incorporate a lot of natural philosophy in it in terms of the kind of impact our actions has on the art around us and on the world around us. But in the spectacle of it, sometimes, especially as I conversed with the group of people I went there who were largely technical students, I realized a lot of that conversations were drowned for the spectacle and the lights and the photogenic element of it. So, how do we ensure that as artists, as students, as well as people are able to maintain like a good experience, they're also holding conversations that will bring this point forward?
That's a really, really good question. I think that, like I have tried to make a point even in my own work. I found that, many artists who are creating works that are meant to be engaged with or engaging in that sense of people interacting or touching or whatever it is that they enable their spectators to do often are shy about also being there and having verbal conversations about it. For me, I think it's really critical to enable those conversations to go beyond just a spectator looking at an artwork and touching and engaging with it to like asking and having this dialogue about, okay, what is it doing for you? What do you think it is? And what do you think, how is it impacting or changing your mind? Because I think without those kind of critical conversations, the experience ends after you see the work, right? And you just see it, you're like, oh, it's great, it looks good in photographs, it's a great representation, but then it doesn't spark any further thought or shifts in perspectives or shifts or changes in behavior, which I feel like it's one of the things stifling the conversation around art as a tool for climate change, because um, when artists would make all these beautiful works and not really talk about it or get people to handle the stuff and really think about what is it doing to you? How is it making you feel? It doesn't go very far. So I think generally just even the audiences allowing themselves to probe a little bit more, send messages to the artists, ask more questions. What is this thing really trying to do? What are you trying to help us to understand? Might be a way forward. But that dialogue for me is so important because I feel like that's one big missing chunk in our engagement with climate change. That there's so many beautiful and creative artworks there that are using recyclable materials, upcycled, you know, elements in art, but there's it doesn't go further. It becomes just academic, and it's all like picture or photogenic, appealing. So I think I don't know if that answers your question, but that's sort of my thought on how to move forward.
Thank you, ma'am.
I think Shauli, you are unmute. You are muted. So I think Srishti is
Yeah,
asking.
Srishti, please unmute yourself and ask the question. And then Shubhacha, you can also ask.
Hi, good evening, everyone. First of all, ma'am, it was such a great moment that we had experienced such a great lecture on this. I think there are very few people who are actually talking about something artistic at the same time, which will make a great impact and change in the world at a real time. And this was also one of the things that for to me, I am master's student. I recently had graduated from a university, but I was not very aware about the bioplastic thing, and it was happening in the world that people are making the art out of the recycling things. Although where I live, in that area, people do make a good use of the recycled and organic material, and they do even in the villages use it for making maybe biogas shampoos, and somehow they also use it as a manure. But then again, my question is that in the third world countries, this should be a big debate, and there should be a bigger discussion on these things. But we cannot see it there. A lot of discussions happening on this topic, because again, everything that we use in the third world is of the plastic, and plastic again, the petroleum one is very cheap, and this is very expensive to make and to also convince the people to use it. So how can we actually start a discussion? How can we make the people participate in such kind of innovation on their own at a local level, so that we can make this change a real one?
Absolutely, and that's a very, very good and interesting question, and something that I've also wrestled with, thinking about, the way in which capitalism has unfairly um, loaded the bulk of this, plastic use on the third world and poorer nations, because they have to survive on making ends meet using these materials. They're affordable. They're the easier way of getting their resources about. So it makes sense. And on the other hand, too, you can also think about the historic trend of first world countries or world countries, and how the industrial revolution started in the West, and they've had like a lot of milestone in getting ahead, and then now that many of the third world countries are starting to build their own capitalist industries and industrial nations, saying no, climate change is there, stop using plastic, stop doing this. I mean, there's an unfairness there, there's an imbalance, definitely. But I do also want to kind of harken back to the thought about indigenous thinking and the way that indigenous societies, and I'm sure in India there are many indigenous societies that really gave precedence to environmental concerns, where they were using natural things to make their bags and to make their everyday materials and household objects. And today we have been re-indoctrinated by the Western world and told that no, those ways of thinking and doing are outdated and are not valid. And so they've replaced it with the more modern capitalist ways of making things, which is using the plastic that will be provided. And the oligarchs and the manufacturers who are producing these plastics are making all the gains, right? and dumping all of the nuisance of these materials on these poor societies because they are very ubiquitous and they're very easy to to access and to use and to dispose of, which is the whole idea: dispose and replace. And so I think that you're right. It is a very complex issue that I don't think we have a simple answer to. But I do believe that if all of us are, those of us who are aware, are able to continue talking about it, to find out what is possible. Is it possible to even take those plastic materials, for instance, plastic bags that are so ubiquitous, and maybe find ways of recycling them so that they can be made into more sustainable bags that would last a little longer, that would not be disposed? Can we find ways of encouraging our governments or changing policies that would allow us to use more reusable things in our systems as opposed to have the plastic issue? Is such a big problem because it has so seeped into our system, into our bodies, into our mind, that we can't even exorcise ourselves from it. We can't remove ourselves from the problem anymore. We're so deep in it. Even our food has microplastic. Our animals have microplastics. Even our bodies have microplastics. So it's like, how do you extract yourself from the issue? But I do hear you, and I feel very pained about it as well because I don't know what the big answer is. But I just know that, like I said, if we're all taking small steps to do small things collectively, all of those will become bigger things and hopefully it will have an impact. So I'm hoping that as you kind of think about it and you find out what people are doing in your locality, what things that they can tweak and change in small ways or in big ways, maybe those things would help. But yes, definitely we have a big problem that is in need of some radical solution. But I don't know what that solution is. But all I know is that I'm doing my bit to try to make a change. Yeah, thank you so much,
So,
Pastor.
taking a cue from this entire conversation, there is just something, a very small thing that I wanted to add here is that humanities itself is also taking a plastic turn. So, there is a new discipline in humanities called a plastic literature. So it derives this idea from Catherine Hill's idea of neuroplasticity, that how our brains and ideas are also like plastic. It's very adaptable. We keep on changing our ideas, our shape in very different shapes and forms. So similarly, the plastic that is there in the nature is also changing itself while also changing us. So the this neuroplasticity transgresses its own boundaries and then it elucidates itself and it's kind of pops not only itself but also us, and thereby it spreads. So I think it's not only limited in eco art, but it's also there in humanities and the philosophy, the modern philosophy, that how people are thinking about it and talking about it.
Well said. Thank you.
Shubhecha wants to ask a question. Shubhecha, you can unmute yourself and ask.
Morning, ma'am.
Hello, Shubita.
I'm here. Good morning. Ma'am, it was an amazing presentation by you. I have liked it very much, and it is very eco-friendly presentation. We should be always aware towards the nature that we are seeing around it, and the plastics that are not to be used. It's very much is aware the nature, that nature is also our like mother earth. We called our earth as a mother, so we should take care of that. So I am only amazed by the presentation that you have made. It was an amazing presentation, and the main thing I want to tell you is that we should always tell that we should save our mother earth. So we should always see also that our mother earth is safe or not, by not speaking, by also helping. And the art that was looking like a butterfly is an amazing. Thank you so much, ma'am, for this amazing presentation. Thank you, Ritamda. Thank you, Sharandi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shubita. Very nice of you.
And also
Thank you, ma'am.
shedding. I think one point that we missed in this presentation, even though it's about plastic waste, I think it will be very bad for us to miss this, and that is one of the most prominent things about your art in general. Leave alone bioplasticity is the idea of art as an experience. that you talk about in your interviews and the idea of shedding. So I wanted to know, as like a personal question, that who are the artists you are inspired from, or how does this idea of your idea of art as an experience, how does it come, and why did you chose the idea of shedding as one of the most prominent features of your artwork?
Oh, that's so good. Thank you so much for that question. Um, when it comes to influence and encounters with other artists or other mindsets or ways of thinking, I think I'm more drawn to philosophies than artists. So as an African, I have a leaning toward the African material philosophy, which basically, uh, how do I call it? It privileges the earth and the spirits as part of human kinship. So it doesn't kind of like suppose that humans are the only agencies that have the ability to make things happen. There is a sense that there is an equilibrium, there is a balance or harmony between humans, the land or the earth, and the spirits. And so every one of those elements has their own life force and have to contribute in various ways. And so I think based on that, when I make art or when I see art that is inspired by the environment, I'm always thinking about what kinds of agencies do these do we, or what kind of uh, homage do we pay to all of these other entities, whether it is the earth around us, whether it is even like the man-made environment around us or the geologic formations, the mountains, the rocks, and the waters, and all those kind of things, and how are we kind of communicating with them in order to create that harmony that the earth really needs. That's sort of where I get my source of inspiration from. Sometimes I would lean into Western philosophies that also are sympathetic towards giving giving more power, or sort of like giving more energy to things that are not human, because I think that plants, insects, birds, animals, they all have something to contribute. Even microorganisms have something to contribute, right? They have their role that they play. They might plague us and they might trouble us at some point, but they have a role to play. Everything has a role to play. And so if we can understand that is so instrumental to the balance of our planet, then I think we'll be more careful in how we handle things, right? We'll be more careful in saying, well, let's cut down the trees and make lots of paper and make lots of money, because we know that if we're cutting down the trees, it's affecting the balance of the equilibrium of the earth, it's affecting different things. Or if we this landfill is generating these kinds of microbes that might come back to harm us later, or if we're letting things get into the waterways, how is that impacting us? So everything is so interconnected. But I think as humans, we have increasingly grown so distant from our relationship to our planetary partners that we no longer think about these. It's no longer second nature for us to say, oh, the thing I'm going to do now, how does it impact all of these other things? What are the ramifications of that? And so we just act. And then we're like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to throw away this shirt and buy another one. Like, okay, where does the material come from? Who is making it? How is it impacting those communities? Like, all of those things, I think, are questions that we need to keep asking. So with regard to influence, I would say that it's more of the philosophies that drive me more than the artists themselves. I mean, I admire so many artists, but and all of that, but I go more with the worldview that come from indigenous societies, and especially my African background.
Thank you so much, Nina, for joining us today. It was such a wonderful, and I think we could not have any other like a better person to be here to start our new season. We are extremely grateful for your presence, and your presentation itself was it was fascinating and it was brilliant. I think I am out of words. If anyone wants to like say anything, you can raise your hand, or otherwise like we will end our session here.
I think we have to end this session like in 2 or 3 minutes. Anyway, it was a really, it was a pleasure for me to attend again a lecture by you, and last time we met at Russell Carson and this time here. It was a wonderful session. I really don't think I have any other question to ask, but to just appreciate the fact that you accepted the invitation to inaugurate the entire series. And this will going to be a very fun series because we are dealing with both environmental humanities and we are trying to incorporate it into practice. So again, thank you so much for joining us, for having this wonderful session, um, and for like for I hope we will stay in touch for future collaborations. But for now, thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for thank you everyone for joining us today. Stay tuned with Victorian Vanguard. We will see you again on next Friday, hopefully. And thank you, Nina, for joining us again.
Thank you. My
With this,
pleasure.
we will take your leave today. And thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good day and good night.
Yes, thank you, everyone. My pleasure to be with you all. Thank you.
Thank you.